So, dear friends, in this video, I am going to explain the concept of economic rent, which is usually used in microeconomics. Let us see what is the meaning of economic rent. Economic rent is the difference between the payments made into a factor of production and the minimum amount that must be spent on that factor of production to obtain its use. Simply speaking, suppose that you want to give $10 to obtain a factor of production. Suppose this $10 is the minimum amount that you have to pay to a factor of production to obtain its service. Let it be labor. Let's suppose that to get 1 day of labor, you need to pay a minimum amount of $10. But you actually pay $12, suppose, or $14. You are paying $14. Then the difference between these two, that is $4. This $4 is known as the economic rent. So simply speaking, economic rent is the difference between the payments made into a factor of production and the minimum amount that must be spent to obtain the use of that factor of production. If you have to give $10 for labor to obtain its service, but at the same time you are paying more than that, that is $14, then the difference between both, what actually you pay, that is $14, but actually you have to pay at the minimum to obtain its service, that is $10. The difference between both is known as economic rent. Now, the following figure illustrates the concept of economic rent in detail. The equilibrium price, here we are showing a market equilibrium. This figure shows factor market equilibrium, and this is a supply curve of labor. Let it be labor. Okay, this is a factor market equilibrium of the factor labor, and a horizontal axis we show the number of workers, and vertical axis we show the wage, and this is a supply curve of labor SL, and this is the demand curve of labor, and demand curve of labor is the same as the marginal revenue product curve of labor. So this is a point of equilibrium. A is the point of equilibrium. Okay, the equilibrium price of labor is W star. This is the equilibrium price of labor. So this is a point of equilibrium. And if you extend a dotted line from point A to the vertical axis where wage is shown, then it will come here. And here we have market W star. So W star is the equilibrium wage rate, and the quantity of labor supplied at this point of equilibrium is L star. And to find out the quantity of labor supplied at point A, you have to again extend a line from A, this point of equilibrium, to the horizontal axis where you show the number of workers, and here we see that L star is the total equilibrium quantity of labor demanded and supplied. The supply of labor is the upward sloping curve, and the demand for labor is a downward sloping curve. This we have explained. So because the supply curve tells us how much labor will be supplied at each wage rate, the minimum expenditure needed to employ L star units of labor is given by the tan shaded area AL star OB. Look at this means figure. You can understand that the minimum you have to pay this OB. For one labor, you have to pay minimum wage, that is OB. So OB multiplied by OL. OB is a minimum wage you have to pay for one labor, and multiplied by this total amount of labor that we are supplying, OL star. Then this area shows the minimum amount that you have to pay, minimum wage bill. You have to pay to get this OL star means amount of labor. Okay, so because the supply curve tells us how much labor will be supplied at each wage rate, The minimum expenditure needed to employ L star units of labor is given by the tan shaded area A L star O B. Below the supply curve, to the left of the equilibrium labor supply curve L star. So below the supply curve means supply curve is S, and to the left of L star, to the left of L star. So this is a minimum wage bill or minimum amount of wage, total amount of wage that you need to pay to get OL star amount of labor. Now, but in perfectly competitive market, workers are paid to the wage W star. But here, in a equilibrium has been established at point E. So therefore, at the equilibrium point, we are paying W star. Minimum you have to pay OB only, but at the equilibrium level, we are paying W star. That means the wage, the equilibrium wage is greater than the wage that would be needed to get them work, get the labor's work. So it means you need to pay only OB to get their work, but at the equilibrium established in the factor market, you are giving W star wage rate. The W star wage rate is greater than the minimum wage rate that needs to be given, that is OB. And because total wage payments are equal to the rectangle OW star AL star. So now let us look at the wage rate that you are actually paying now. OW is the wage rate and OL star is the total amount of labor supplied. So this whole area shows the actual wage that you are giving to the laborers now. So total wage payments is equal to OW star AL star. But minimum you have to give only AL star OB. Minimum you have to give only this much. But now you are giving a total payment equal to OW star AL star. Okay, now the economic rent is earned by labor is given by the area ABW star. So look at this area, ABW star is the economic rent. So simply speaking, economic rent is the difference between, you can say it is the difference between this area, OW star AL star, that is OW star AL star, this is a total area, minus this area, AL star OB. Okay, so when you deduct this area, this total minimum wage bill from the total wage payments, you will get this area. That is ABW star. Okay, this ABW star is the economic rent. So this area is known as the economic rent. This area is called the economic rent. Okay, now note that if the supply curve is perfectly elastic, this is very important. If the supply curve is perfectly elastic, economic rent will be zero. So this supply curve is elastic supply curve. Let us suppose that it is perfectly elastic. Then it is perfectly elastic means then it will look like this. A perfectly elastic supply curve looks like this. It will be parallel to the horizontal axis, perfectly elastic supply curve. Now, this supply curve, if it turns to this direction, you can see that the entire economic rent will be wiped out. Economic rent will become zero. So the conclusion is that if the supply curve is perfectly elastic, then the economic rent will be zero. I will explain that means again with the help of this figure. Let us suppose that this supply curve, SL supply curve, becomes like this. This is a demand curve and this is our supply curve. This is a perfectly elastic supply curve. Then there is no economic rent. Here there is, because the actual payment, total wage payments will be equal to the minimum wage payment. Then economic rent will be zero. Economic rent will be zero. So if the supply curve becomes perfectly elastic, if the supply curve of labor or if the supply curve of any other factor for that matter becomes perfectly elastic, then the economic rent will turn out to be zero. Economic rent will turn out to be zero. And let us take another case where the supply curve becomes perfectly inelastic, like this, perfectly inelastic. Perfectly inelastic. Then also we have a situation where full amount will become the economic rent. Full amount will become the economic rent. So this is the difference between a situation where the supply curve becomes perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic. So you just understand that. The economic rent is the difference between economic rent is the difference between the payments made into a factor of production and the minimum amount that must be spent to obtain the use of that factor.